sun is, where is it? Yeah, Virgo.
Virgo.
Yeah, your moon is actually Aries, like me.
Aries. Okay. And then is
Yeah.
it rising Libra?
Your ascendant is Libra. You have one of the really interesting things. You're very Scorpionic, um, because you have um, 4 planets. That's the heaviest weight of your chart in Scorpio, and your North Node's there. So that's quite big. In that, this is why you're probably quite intrigued in occult things.
Hmm.
In past life, you probably definitely or are very drawn to mystical people now,
Right.
um, because it's actually part of your karma that's something, yeah, that you are very gifted at, and you
Okay.
can actually use it to create abundance.
Right. Very
Mm.
interesting.
Your mum and dad, were they separate when you were born?
No.
Had they separated?
No.
No. Okay. It's just because your moon's in Aries and it's opposing the sun. So
Okay.
usually that represents the mum being single. I was going to check because I was thinking I don't actually think that. Yours could just be that your mum was like quite independent,
Hmm.
and they were quite independent in the way they were, and like
Mm-hmm. I know
that she
she was on her own when she had me.
yeah,
Because
so that
yeah,
makes
yeah. So my dad was taking my brother to school at the time, and he missed my birth. So that maybe,
yeah, that
yeah.
makes total sense because independence.
Yes.
And the father archetype, he has a lot to do with like big networks of people, and like generally, like I don't know if like he's some kind of, I don't know if he's a Virgo. Sun represents father, but like your mum, I don't know if she's like self-employed in that she has like a daily business, or she has a business where she's service based, or she's like constantly serving other people. Don't
Yeah.
know.
My
She's a
mum and
teacher.
dad have a business together.
Right. Is it
Yes.
service based because the Virgo archetype is like super strong?
I guess it's like an electrical wholesale business.
Oh,
But my
that
mum
totally
is
sense.
my mum's very people pleaser as well.
Yeah, so she's in the place where it's serving people directly, but your
Hmm.
dad is in the role of engineer, electrical,
Yeah.
fixing things.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
you can see it. And
Definitely.
he's got a relationship with Uranus and in the third house of business, and Uranus is electric.
Ah,
Mm.
very cool. And he's a Gemini. My mum's a Libra.
You can't really see that. You can
Hmm.
see that because oh, well, you can see he's ruled by Mercury, which does rule Gemini, but you can more see that he's a fixer. A fixer.
Hmm.
He'll be, yeah, a fixer person.
Makes sense. So let's start off with you before we get into my business in a little bit more detail. Tell us a bit
Yeah.
about who you are, what you do, how you got into astrology.
So I'm Cassie, if you haven't introduced me. So I am an astrologer, an energy healer. I generally do coaching, but it's more, it used to be health coaching. It's mainly sort of holistic now. But I do teach yoga and meditation. I also do sound healing. So it's basically any of the skills that are that you don't tell your family about because they sound like witchcraft and woo woo. That's kind of what I do. And it's all to really help empower people to have the tools to heal themselves, because I believe that everyone has their own innate wisdom, power within them. And sometimes it's just a case of people holding space or facilitating for them or creating an awareness. So I do it through my blogs, my podcast, coaching, astrology, yeah, and client facing time as well. So that's kind of what I do in a nutshell.
Amazing. Yeah, there's so many different areas, obviously all very connected. And I love the transition from just general health coaching into the more spiritual and energetic. Because I always say, like, people are so focused on the diet, the supplements, they want to do the testing, they want to figure out what's going on, but they really ignore the the actual important stuff of maybe limiting beliefs, childhood traumas, all of that. And it's not until they address those big things that they really do get a massive improvement with their health. Was there anything in particular that triggered you to transition to the more mental and emotional side of things and away from health coaching?
Yeah, like 100%. So for me, I had a fairly traumatic childhood, to be honest, and I grew up very materialistic, and in the sense of what you see is what you get and there's nothing else, and a poverty mindset, very just unaware. And then I went through the loss of my mum when I was 60, and I was kind of that put threw everything into question for me, and I really got quite severely ill with anorexia, and that turned into its own self-perpetuating kind of health obsession. So in essence, my health obsession, I'm really kind of obsessive about learning. So I learned absolutely everything there was to know about nutrition. It was like keto.
Mm-hmm.
Before keto was a thing, I was like on it, whatever. Just on every ism and extreme there could be, all to try and look good. And yeah, I was like totally ripped, but then it moved into being like severely anorexic. And when I was kind of at the depths of my illness and probably at the depths of not being aware, I encountered like this guy overseas when I was working out in Tenerife teaching yoga. And he essentially came up to me and said, "You need some healing." And I was like, "No, go away, strange man in white
Stranger
clothes."
danger.
Yeah, literally, like, absolutely not. But something in me was like, yes. And it was from that point on, it was a Reiki treatment I had at sunset on this beach with this man I didn't know. And it was undeniable that there was more to what I could see. And from that point on, I remember the next day, like, there were never storms in Tenerife. I had this huge purging. There was all these storms. It was crazy. And essentially, like, from that point on, I refound all of these hidden aspects of myself, which were really mystical. Because as a kid, I was really mystical. But I was quite like psychic, and the adults in my environment didn't like it. So I switched off the ability, and I knew that my mum was going to die when she went into hospital, but no one would listen, and they thought I was being stupid. And that was very traumatic because I knew. And so we shut it all down, really. And so it was kind of like a returning of all those skills, and possibly past life skills, who knows. But actually, like, the more in my health journey I realized a lot of it was vibration. And yet, like, food is, yes, it's food, but it's vibrational frequency, and the way we talk to ourselves is a vibration. And essentially, when I broke everything down and just understood the energetic feeling of my whole life, it was very easy to see what was making me ill, and why I had so many gut problems, why my periods were messed up, why I was anxious all the time. And for me, yes, nutrition has been one thing, but ultimately in my coaching and in my journey, it's hugely been about seeing beyond what we can actually see, and then integrating that into the physical, because that's I don't know, definitely for me and my clients, that's where real change is happening. And I think it just comes down to understanding that everyone comes into health and wholeness and good health, the best health that they can be in, when they strip away all the layers that of like incongruence and like inauthenticity. So I think that's why I ended up doing more of the holistic, because it resonates more. It's where I kind of step into my magnificence, really. For now, I mean, it could
Mm-hmm.
change.
Yeah, I love that journey. It definitely sounds like there was a lot going on, but I think it has put you on your path. Like there's been a silver lining in maybe all of the struggles that you went through, and now you can help others identify that as well. But with the Reiki session, how does Reiki actually work? Because if you've ever like seen it, it's basically someone stood over the top of you with their hands, sometimes not even touching your body. How does that physically work for someone maybe who's never heard of Reiki? Like what is it and how is it, how do some of these energetic practices actually work?
So Reiki is a bit mind-blowing in that I can send to a client in like LA. It still amazes me, and I've been doing it like 9 years, and it still amazes me. So, but when we remember at the end of the day, everything is quantum energy at its core. You know, I mean, we don't know everything, but I think that's one thing that science has proved. And Reiki essentially is energy healing in that it's just you're channeling a pure godlike or source, or it's actually known as the life force energy, and you are literally attuned to that frequency of what I would say is like pure love and healing, and it depends because there are different types of Reiki healers. Some work with angelic frequency and so on, but essentially you're helping that body's energy balance in the way it needs to, and that reminds the body that it can heal itself. The thing about Reiki is, if we remember, our body is, yes, it's cells, we can physically touch it, but at its very core it's vibrating particles, and beyond that it's just energy, an energetic phenomena. And it's kind of like it's bringing harmony to what can be a bit of quantum chaos and dis-ease. And you know, because everything is vibration, we're bringing the body into a vibrational harmony and a space of healing, and that's essentially what Reiki does. So people can come to Reiki when they have chronic pain, when they have illness. People come, you know, I found it because I was traumatized. Sometimes I didn't really know what I wanted from it. Some people can have it for past life healing. I had a lady this morning and she's seen like 50 past lives, crazy, like, oh, just ridiculous things she was saying. And me, I'm just delivering the Reiki, that's it. And some people can experience better sleep. I have people who, you know, experience like they maybe have an anxious tick, where I had a lady who scratched her neck a lot and it was just red raw, and nothing could get rid of this neck scratch, like nothing. And then I uncovered and found, and I didn't tell her this, but there was like kind of like a underworld entity attached to like her neck. I know that sounds a bit crazy, but all that was because some underworld entity had the same vibrational match as her on some of her, you know, past life trauma or early childhood trauma. So it managed to vibrationally match, and then it attached into an auric field. So you're able to like shift this out just with pure Reiki energy, and then her rash stops and she stops scratching. So she doesn't know that that's my process, and I didn't share with her that that's what I was doing. But this is like literally how Reiki works. Like anything can happen because nothing is off limits. We're completely like, there's just a limited outcome of what we can have. So Reiki essentially can be for anything, and it just reminds the body that it can heal itself, and that's like at its most simplest. But then for someone who's a really established practitioner or is really quite deep in their spiritual studies, their guides can come through. And I say guides meaning vibrational entities that are supporting them. You can have like all sorts. It's really cool. So it is for everyone, and it is literally someone standing over you with hands on certain places. But if it's a distance treatment, it's still going to work exactly the same, which is a weird thing.
I know.
Yeah.
definitely crazy, but I've experienced it working as well. This was an in-person session, and I had a really bad headache afterwards. I don't know what that
Yeah.
indicates, but she said she was working on my crown chakra. There was a lot of blockages there, and I had a really terrible headache for like 3 hours. Immediately after I left the room, it hit me, and I never get headaches ever. And I remember my mum telling me that she also had Reiki when she was younger, and immediately after, she had the heaviest period of her life,
Oh my
and
God.
she wasn't even due a period, and it just started. So crazy things definitely happen. This isn't to like scare anyone off, but just expect that there may be some shifts in the body, and it's all working positively as well, which is good. And on the same note, well, kind of, how do chakras relate to Reiki? Is this something different, or is it kind of the same, what it focuses on?
Well, chakras are, um, most of the Western society who know of chakras know about the 7 chakras. So that, they say that chakras are, it literally translates as wheel. It's a turning point of energy in the body, and actually masculine and feminine, or yin and yang, however you like to call them,
Mm-hmm.
in the male sexed body they're actually they're moving a certain way, and in the female in a different way. There is no such thing as an overactive chakra. I used to think there was, but recently I've discovered that there isn't. But they're essentially energetic places in the body which correspond to different organs, different energetic feelings or emotions. For example, our sacral chakra is below the navel, it's in the space of the womb, it's related to pleasure, creativity, emotions, femininity, sexuality. So that's a example. And each chakra can be governed by different crystals, different planets, but there are actually like hundreds of chakras in our body. Many of them are outside of our body, and one of the most interesting chakras, which is the soul star chakra above the head, this is actually really important because it's actually about being more in the physical. And there's a lot of spiritual people out there who kind of think that we need to be detaching from the physical, and like we don't at all. We are in the 3D, this human amazing costume. And so it's quite interesting the work we can even do just with that one chakra that's not even mentioned. And everyone can work on their soul star chakra by actually coming more into the physical. So some people don't actually need to be doing all the spiritual work to find a direct plug into source. And sometimes I think we need to do loads of spiritual work to feel more godlike or happy, and actually sometimes we need to come more in the physical. So you can read about chakras anywhere. I mean, I have like a chakra healing guide, which is quite fun. But you sort of learn what they are for you. But I definitely know that certain chakras have an energetic consequence in the body in terms of creating dis-ease. However, I think sometimes we can start to let go of the mainstream chakra things that we know, and actually just see what our intuition brings, because there's hundreds, and actually we're containing them all. So they're good, and they're good to read about, and they're a good starting point, but I think everyone's got their own unique knowledge of the body, and once they get more in tune with themselves, they'll start to know what this, there's not a chakra in my kneecap or something, but I feel it, but there probably is a chakra there.
Right,
So
interesting. Yeah, I've not
yeah.
heard that perspective before. I think with everything, it gets very mainstream and trendy, and then we just lose the the traditional wisdom of the body.
Yeah.
So definitely agree with that one. What about the past lives that you've mentioned before? Does everyone have past lives? Is it only those who are maybe psychic that they can identify this?
So past lives is a funny one, because essentially, if we're going to go like I probably won't word this as well as, say, someone like maybe Paul Chek or Shaman Durek. They're really cool people to look at, because there isn't really, time is like a construct we have to make sense of this reality. Like, in my mind, this is what I know for me, but it's like, all lives are happening now. It's different timelines. That's what I like to call it, different timelines. And there are certain, so in astrology, we kind of believe that everything is just karma not being like you get bad things if you do bad things. It's literally like action, consequence. And so continuously we are recycling through death and rebirth. And it's like the actions in this life, if we ask for something in this life, we might get it 2 lives down the line, even though technically speaking, time is all happening now, which kind of blows my brain a bit. But when you look at, like, quantum healing and stuff, it's like we're constantly able to heal different lives. And so we have to kind of think of it in the terms of past and future, because otherwise our human brain, I think, would explode. But you can see past lives through astrology, or you can, if you don't believe in past lives, often the past life echoes early childhood. So, like, for example, in your chart, if I look at it, you have, so you can see the past life in the astrology chart for anyone that does look at charts, through the South Node and the North Node. And the South Node in your chart is in the 8th house. The 8th house being one of death, sudden change, other people's money, inheritance, mortgages, debts. There's a link with your kind of other houses, obviously. So for you, yours is a lot about becoming independent in this life. It's a lot about creating your own financial stability, because that's where your North Node is, in the house of self-sustenance. But actually for you, it's through occult means, or through those 8th house means. Those are things like astrology, psychotherapy, counseling, occult, mysticism. And for you, you could actually create loads and loads of wealth, fame not being like, like Kim Kardashian, like a legacy and a deep respect in the occult field. And you would actually have a lot of power when you turn to those occult things, because they're actually in your past life journey. However, maybe in a past life you had it a bit easy and someone else might have financially supported you. It might have been that in childhood financially everything was fine, and you didn't have to think about having to perhaps create your own resources. And suddenly now, as you're getting older, as you come more into your North Node, you're being asked to actually really let go of support from other people. And it's more like for you that a guru figure will come in, or a teacher that shows you how to create your own self-sustenance. That's kind of how it's working for you. But our past life is important because it's essentially about clearing karma. And the nature of astrology is just the nature of like knowing God and self-realization. And so we can use it to think, okay, how can I improve on kind of like the energetic imprints of my soul? And so some stuff comes around in our life that is past life stuff. Like, for example, now we're having a huge eclipse thing happening. Anyone in the astrological world knows January 2020, it's a big time. And it is. But this is actually something that began in the year 1200, and it's a series of eclipses that actually ends in 2400. So it's this cycle of timelines that's being cleansed and purged. But it's kind of like what we do now can energetically impact those other timelines. So I don't know if that helps, because I know there's things like past life regression, which are really, really powerful. I know there's people that have healed from one past life regression experience. They've had like healing of like something like she had a jaw. There was this story I heard, and she couldn't move her jaw. She had this surgery and it went wrong, and she did past life regression, and then she could move her jaw for the first time in like 10 years. So, I mean,
anything could happen.
Yeah.
So in January 2020, could you just explain again, like what's happening? What can we do? What should we be focusing on?
Okay, so this started kind of last January, but this is I've done a whole podcast on this because it's huge. Essentially, I mean, in the UK, let's say the political climate is going to the gutter.
Mm-hmm.
And we kind of could sense this. I mean, we had Brexit come in and whatever, but essentially we have the South Node, which is it's stripping away any illusion, and it's teaching us, South Node, wherever it kind of goes, it's getting us closer to God, but we can't know God without sometimes knowing struggle and pain, and South Node sometimes likes to strip us of everything until we can only know that God or universe or source is like the one constant. That's a really tiny way of saying it. And then you have, it's classed as like a malefic, that being that it's not nice. It depends, I mean, what you think about that. And then we have Pluto, which is another malefic or tamasic planet, and that is like, Pluto is the underworld, it's transmutation, so it's like changing the collective unconscious at the deepest level. And then Saturn is limitation, fear, blockage, again another tamasic planet. Saturn is only concerned with absolute truth. It's also related to karma. Saturn also rules governments, authority, patriarchy, and this is all happening. It's actually the first time this exact conjunction has happened since last time this happened in Capricorn, where it is now, which also represents authority, patriarchy, big business, corporations, capitalism, coldness, stoicism. It's those themes. And the last time that this happened was in like the 1500s, 1400s, and that was when it's like when the Luther age was, when the Catholic Church was completely undermined and kind of abolished, and the Bible was decentralized, and so power was taken away from the people that held it, and it was more like liberal and for the people. That was like in all through Europe, and it was, I mean, you can see it was when Henry VIII was reigning, and kind of part of why he changed to Protestant, and I don't know what he did, I think he swung around, but it was all to do with that time. And so this is the same energy now. And so for a lot of people, it's manifested in a certain area of life, because everyone, it's a different area of life, that they have had no choice but to purge old limiting ancestral beliefs, things that hold them back from their power. That's really big. Relationships that hold them back from their power. Jobs, you know, for me, I've had to let go of all the work that undervalues me. I had to let go of a relationship that was a long-term relationship because it literally shattered every illusion. It kind of brought me to like my knees, because I had to surrender to the fact that I had to step into the unknown in terms of me, my value system. For you, just as an example, it would have been happening in your 4th house. So it would have been a huge time of moving away from like the limitations of the family structure, and perhaps how they programmed your belief system. Any childhood wounds could have been to do with moving away from the family home, or there's a big change in the family home, something around the mother archetype. The mother is the 4th house, and shattering and getting rid of and purging anything around those things that have held you back. And then it's asking us to move into the North Node, which is Cancer. For you, that's in the 10th house of career. So how can you let go of beliefs and limitations from childhood, the mother archetype, in order to actually move and create a legacy which is unique and more in alignment with actually who you authentically are. And that can be really scary because it feels unknown, and that's really the nature of the North Node. It feels a bit like unknown. And then for me, like, it was to move into the complete unknown, because it was like the 8th house of a complete mysticism, astrology, occult. So I had to go into this place where it made no sense for me to go logically, because it's kind of like where I live. No one really does this kind of stuff, and it was terrifying. But that's when the rewards come. And on a global scale, this is where all of our structures that we've known that cannot possibly carry on the way they are, because it's trashing the planet. And we know, like, as a whole collective Earth, that alongside this heavy energy I've just talked about, we have Uranus in Taurus, which is shake-ups on the Earth. This is why we're getting all the crazy weather, tsunamis, fires in Australia, the Amazon's burning, because it's the time purging, and the Earth is going to let us know that how we have lived and the structures that are in place cannot continue. And this is a big catharsis and a big purging. And 2020 is when the exact conjunction is, in January, but it will still be triggered a little bit later. And it has to happen, because we're in a massive, humongous blackout and crisis, really. People are unhappy. The Earth is falling to bits, and not to be sad about it, but it has to get this bad. We have to have these political entertainment, shall we say, and these governments and these political figures that are the epitome of absolute patriarchy, and just, you can't even get your head around how they've come into power. They have to come in, because they are the last thing that's going to trigger the purging and the kind of ascension into where we want to be as a collective. And in shamanic culture, they're calling it the blackout, and it's either the destruction or the movement into something more beautiful, so we can move into more peace and harmony and love. And so it's a big energy, and the best way people can prepare for it individually is if we view everything, our internal vibration manifests outwardly. And so if we within ourselves have a state of dis-ease, we know the skeletons in the closet that are keeping us anxious, we know we're not in our power or authenticity, in our own private space or with a therapist or in whatever way feels authentic, we can search into those incongruences. And when we go into those places, we can start to heal them and integrate into more wholeness. And then actually doing the self-work will manifest outwardly, because we are all then having a ripple effect. So I guess the message for most astrologers is, do not continue down the path of inauthenticity just because it feels safe, because it won't keep you safe, because you'll just get an even bigger wake up, shake up from the universe eventually if you are not following what you need to follow. And so even though it's scary, now is the time to really step forward and let go of those things that don't serve you, because now is the time.
Yes.
An incredible opportunity, but scary. It's scary.
Definitely. So very inspiring. Yeah, exciting times, even though it is a little bit stressful, like you said. It'll be worth it in the long run. What about all of these other terms that we sometimes hear about, like Saturn return or Mercury retrograde? Like, what do these, like the common ones, are they, again, something that's been popularized and maybe taken out of context a little bit?
Can be. I mean, Mercury retrograde, it's all about the context. Astrology is all about the context. So we have to be careful with all these spiritual things. Like, we can use them to define rather than create opportunity. So yes, Mercury retrograde, things do go a bit awry, but it does depend where it's happening. And we're actually in Mercury retrograde like 4 times a year, 3 times a year. And yeah, things do go wrong. You know, I see it at full moon. I see all these things. So there's weight to them. But I've actually done a whole podcast episode debunking the myths, because it does depend where it is. So there's weight to it. But I would say it's a bit like law of attraction, do you know? So if you think, oh God, my computer's going to break, whereas you could actually, you could do a prayer to Mercury and ask it to be a really harmonious retrograde, and then you watch, you might get gifts. And, you know, you can, you know, like people say, don't start a relationship on Mercury retrograde or something, or don't start things. It's not necessarily true. Like, there's other things, in fact, like something big in astrology which no one really talks about often is Mahadashas, and they're bigger than any transit, because they're actually life cycles that are happening. And that's where people might say, I've had 20 years of hell, because it doesn't matter what has happened transit wise, they've been in a Mahadasha. And then Saturn return, that is a big one. Saturn return is, you can't really ignore its presence. The only reason your Saturn return will be bad is if you're not someone who wants to be self-aware, you know, and they don't want to do the self-reflection. I'm actually recording a podcast tonight with my astrologer friend on Saturn return. But it's essentially where Saturn comes along and it says, what is the truth of your existence in this life? Your mortality is brought into question. Your legacy is brought into question. And this is why you often have people sort of have a sudden change of career in their Saturn return. They suddenly move away. It's quite a big one. It really asks you to bring your authenticity as a human into question. But often people who have lots of planets before Saturn return, generally, by the time they get to it, can actually bring rewards. So it's not always bad. Saturn isn't bad. It wants to give, but it can't give on bad foundations. And Saturn return asks you to turn into your unconscious and look at it, in order for then, you know, to actually expand and realize further self-growth. And so Saturn return, if people are going through it, honestly, it's a really good idea to consult with an astrologer, because like you can get so much insight from them. And the Saturn return is actually an opportunity, but I think people just go, oh, it's my Saturn return, oh, Mercury's retrograde, and it's like, guys, you're missing the point. So yeah.
Am I right in saying this typically happens around the age of 27, 28, or is it different for everyone?
So 28 to about 30. It's like, can be a 2.5 year transit. But there are other conjunctions that are just as profound. Like when people get Saturn conjunct Venus, that's like hard. But if people are in like a Ketu Mahadasha, South Node Mahadasha period, if you consult with an astrologer to know about your Dasha periods, that to me is probably even more informative. Like it does happen around the age of 28 to 30, but say, for example, you're going through your Saturn return, but you're in a Ketu Mahadasha, it's going to be a little bit more rocky. Whereas, you know, me, I'll be in my Venus Mahadasha, and for me, where I've just been through a horrible Mahadasha, and so it will actually be a time of reward. And so it is important, but like dashas are really important too. They're an old Vedic Jyotish, like astrological, very, very ancient, but they're just incredible. And I've predicted pregnancies from this. You know, people that have got a miscarriage energy in their chart kept having miscarriages, and I knew that when they hit their moon Mahadasha that they would carry the baby full term, and that's exactly what happened. So they're big. The Mahadasha is big. And so I will tell you, you're about to go through your Ketu Mahadasha.
No. Is that a bad one?
well, you started it last Christmas, and it would have been more around like, it would have been a lot about materials and letting go of material gains and starting to trust in God as a source of abundance. That would have been a bit of it. But it's set. They say it's 7 years of hell. It's not. It's not 7 years of hell. It's 7 years of having to understand that there is more that we. If we put our trust in God, there is nothing we cannot achieve. It's kind of, but if people are so attached to the material, then it's going to be really hard for them.
Yeah.
But for you, it will be about letting go of dependency, and which, sometimes we don't think we are until Ketu comes along and shows us, and just a little thing we didn't see. And it can be really gentle like that, but it will actually help propel you further into complete, like, being really abundant. And you can be potentially hugely abundant, because you've got Jupiter literally inflating your north nodes, and that's a big energy. Jupiter was originally going to be the sun. It's a really big planet. It's like a massive planet, and so it might feel a little bit of a challenging lesson for 7 years, but it will cycle through and bring great gifts. By the end of it, you'll be, if you follow the signs that come up, and you'll be in a place of being a literally plugged into source, kind of knowing there's an infinite supply, manifester, like whatever you want, you can pretty much manifest directly, especially because you'll move straight into your Venus Mahadasha, which is 20 years of just, it can be really good. And for you, it will be good for you, I think. And so, then you might work with an astrologer, and you might say, okay, what mantras should I use? What can I do to help this? What can I do to alleviate it? And a good astrologer will tell you, things you can do. And there's simple things, like play this mantra on this day of the week, light a candle to Venus, and be specific about this thing. So, there's lots you can actually do. But yeah, Saturn return, Mercury retrograde, they talked about a lot. But like anything, like in the fitness world, keto, so then everyone goes keto and they get really poorly because they followed something without actually knowing in their body, is this good for myself, and is this right on my vibration? Because Mercury retrograde may not affect a lot of people. And then others it may affect because of how their Mercury is placed in their chart, how much Mercury rules of their chart. So I definitely know for me, trash is my speech, and I can't speak. It's really funny.
You get tongue-tied during Mercury retrograde.
It's like something happens with the brain and the mouth. It's like they're not connected.
Yeah, and you're right though. Like people who have no idea about Mercury retrograde, this could be like the best period of time for them. They could get a promotion. They could be having the best time of their life. But then there's the people who are scared of it. They're constantly worried that something's going to happen, and it probably will happen because the mind is very powerful.
Yeah, and like it's so true what you say, because this Mercury retrograde for me was extremely profound, but it was in Scorpio for a lot of people. But actually, relationships can come back for healing. It was about healing. This one was a lot about healing. But like people can then like iron out their systems in their business, for example, or they're revisiting an old project they couldn't finish. For me, I actually met like someone I'm seeing, and it's quite fated and weird. Like we are definitely connected on a soul level in a positive way, and I met them on Mercury retrograde. And then if I looked at conventional astrology, it'll be like, oh no. But it just means that the relationship will be seeking depth, because it's the energy of it. Plus it's not like you're getting married on a retrograde. It's
yeah. Well, that's a good thing. And what about the differences between traditional and mainstream star signs and actual astrology, like the ones that are in magazines and newspapers, and even on Instagram sometimes they put like Virgo, this is who you are, this is what's going to happen this week for you. what are your thoughts?
Okay, I love astrology and I love that it's in the mainstream because it gets people into it. However, it can be misleading. So the star signs, they are archetypes. And so, yes, there is some weight to them, but predicting based just on someone's sun sign and putting in newspaper or magazine, um, making any predictions when you're not looking at someone's birth chart, unique chart, like you can look at twins charts and they are not the same because there's a 2.5 minute window in which it changes, like their D12 chart, which is a completely different chart based on their soul, their karma, it's just, yeah, it's, you can't predict from that. And so that's where I'm like, it's a bit of fun. But also then it devalues the power of astrology. And this is why people say astrology doesn't work. Like, well, it's not going to work because you're reading something that's not based on any of your birth energy. And then it's quite funny because these archetypes are true and it is fun to make a joke. Like there are certain archetypes, that will follow certain patterns and it's a giggle, and like I love to share the memes because I just find them hilarious, but there is some weight to the archetypes. However, if you've just got your sun there but the sun is debilitated, or the sun is conjunct something else, or there's a stellium in your chart, or the sun is damaged in some way, and then you read the newspaper and it says this is expect money this week and you don't get any, you're like, well, that's a load of trash, so it's like that is frustrating as an astrologer because there's legitimate astrologers out there and we're doing quite profound work on people's. My astrology is very much based on the psychology and what we can do to overcome our limitations by looking at astrology. And so then it devalues what we do. So people can read this stuff, it's fine. But my advice is to get a birth chart, literally on a calculator, birth chart calculator, and then start to learn what you can, maybe on YouTube. It takes years, but knowing something is better than nothing. And or get a reading with an astrologer, but the archetypes, they're good, but don't read the paper and expect to do it.
Because like some of the Virgo things, for me, I really connect with them, like the traits and the being controlling and being a little bit obsessive and type A in certain situations. It very much makes sense, and I know a lot of people do really resonate with the archetype. But what about the moon and rising kind of, I don't know what they're called, kind of moon and rising types as well? Like, why is that important and how are they determined?
So what I will say, there's another archetype to Virgo, many archetypes, one of them being the earth angel, the earth priestess, the healer, the service, earth magic, actually are really, really powerful at shifting and lifting curses, black magic. So Virgo archetype, again, is that, people say that they're warriors, but it's actually not the total truth of the Virgo archetype. And the sun there is okay there, but your sun is actually in the 12th house and the 11th house, depending which chart you look at. So it means you're actually potentially going to ascend and excel on your soul level and could be creatively very expressive as like a spiritual teacher who will be able to teach people to a spiritual teacher in that your legacy, you're helping to people to heal themselves through practical earthly ways, in a way that's sort of a self-dedication, which is like a spiritual practice, and that makes more sense. Whereas if you just look at your sun sign in Virgo, you might be like, great, I'm a hoot. You've actually got the moon in Aries, and the sun is the archetype also in the chart of the father. And we discussed earlier, like you can see that your father is in Virgo. So I asked if he was like engineering or something like this, because it was aspected as well by Uranus, which is electric, and the mother was Aries, because the moon is Aries, and she was alone at the time of birth. Aries is independence. So there's all these correlations. The moon is how the mind works also, in that it's the natural state of the mind. So for us, Aries moon, it's like our mind. It's fun because it's through the mind of a child, but it can be very direct and one-track minded. Mars and Aries are the archetype of A to B. Mars is the brahmacharya. He just wants to get to God. He doesn't care how. And his energy is forward moving, direct, masculine. It's not interested in the frivolities and the bits and the bobs. It just wants to get from A to B. And that's how your mind might work, to the point of sometimes it's like as you master, it's very different, but it can definitely be tunnel visioned in relationships, and that can be something you really have to learn about yourself through relationships, through being really one track minded in relationships. For Aries moon, and for your placement in particular, and through other people, you actually get a realization of yourself and where you need to actually be gentler and more compromising with others. Your ascendant it changes very quickly. Everyone's does on the time you're born, and it's really important because it's like when the sun was rising on the east, this is not the sun, that when you were born, the sign that was rising on the east, and it determines where all your houses are. It's really, really important, and that's why you need to find out your birth time to have a good astrology reading.
Is that the rising sign that's Libra for me?
Yours is Libra. Yeah. So don't look at people say that means you're appearing outwardly like a Libra. It's not actually the truth.
Okay. Yeah, because I thought that, because I read into some of that and I was like, no, I don't really connect with what it's saying.
You won't.
Yeah.
No, you'll actually appear more Aries.
Okay.
You'll connect with Aries a lot more. Because your moon's Aries, but we look at the descendant, which is opposite to the ascendant. So the opposite of the rising for you is Aries. And this is how other people are seeing you, and it's how you show up in the outside world. So you are very straightforward, to the point, not hard necessarily, but you might have quite a lot of energy about you. And you've got a lot of planets in your first house, the first house being archetypally Aries. So you have stronger Aries and Scorpio than you do anything else.
Okay.
So you're actually probably a lot more intense than a Libra. And through showing up as your descendant, so showing up quite independent in the world and quite assertive, you actually will learn, usually through how you're appearing, about your instinctual self. Your instinctual self will be quite Libra, and it's definitely an energy. This dynamic is where, through being outward and forward moving, you realize how you can give to others, but you're actually learning how you need to receive from others, and actually start to be more gentle and observational. And that's really important when those two are happening. So if you read just about your rising, it can be helpful, but it is helpful, but to get a good picture of the ascendant, you need to look at where your ascendant is, where Mars is placed, which for you is in Cancer. So nurturing others, that's a really important thing for you to do. But also we look where Aries is, and yours is in the house of relationships and the house of serving other people. So you blend those energies and you get someone who's very passionate about creating a legacy, serving other people, but it's a very direct way, and it's maybe with the physical body, because Aries is the physical body. So then you can see why it is you do what you do.
Yeah. That's crazy. Yeah, makes so much sense.
Yeah.
And what about the apps like CoStar? I know is one, and the Pattern. Have you heard of those? Do you think that they're legit?
Yeah. I've heard of them. I've seen that CoStar apparently a few astrologers use, so couldn't comment, but I think it's quite good because it tells you what hour you're in, like you're in the hour of
Mm.
Mercury, you're at in the hour of Jupiter, and that is good because if you're working, say, with astrological magic, which is something I give to a lot of my clients, which is very simple, but you can make sure that in the hour of Mercury, say you've got a big contract coming through that's massive and it's scary or something, you want to work with Mercury and maybe Jupiter or something, and you would maybe on those hours make sure you say a short prayer to Mercury or a manifestation, or if you're doing a spell for love, you would do it on the hour of Venus on a Friday. So it's CoStar, I think, is good for that because it
Mm.
tells you the hours.
Mm-hmm.
Honestly, I actually use my intuition, and I
Mm-hmm.
connect with different planets, as in I say to Saturn one week, can you show me how you function? And then I learn about Saturn. But also there's a really cool birth chart calculator called Astrolada. It's on astrolada.com, and that's really cool. And it gives you a personalized 7-day transit calculator, and they're good, but the Mahadashas are bigger
Mm-hmm.
again,
Okay.
or I just think they are bigger.
Yeah.
But it's still nice. I still pay for it and look at it because,
Mm.
like, I'm an astrology geek. So
Yeah.
don't know about the apps. Couldn't say.
Yeah. I personally enjoy them because it does take into more consideration the sun, moon, and rising sign, not just the star
Yeah.
sign that's in the magazine. So it is a lot more personal, and some of the things like really connect on certain days. Some of the time, it's just not. It doesn't make sense, and that's to be expected. Sometimes everything's not going to be totally accurate for every person. But
No.
yeah, I like them, and I'll link them in the show notes if people want to have a look at those, and all of the podcasts that you've mentioned as well. I'll definitely link into those as well. Is there anything else on my chart that you want to share that you think I should be aware of, maybe for 2020 or for future, or anything that you can tell about my personality, anything like that?
So we can see lots in the chart. So, like, one thing I will say is you particularly, I don't know why this has come up now because there's so much I can talk about, but you have to be quite careful of inflammation in your digestive tract. Don't know if you know that.
Yeah. Definitely.
Yeah. So you must be very mindful of that. Try and avoid too many pitta foods,
Mm.
hot foods,
Mm-hmm.
pungent. I mean, I don't know too much, but I know that's one thing you must be careful of.
Yeah.
The intestines comes up quite a lot in your chart.
Mm-hmm.
Other things that we can see in your chart that you'll be very, very gifted with your own small business, as in the small business structure online. You can see that in your chart. However, there's some desire to travel and experience other culture in order to expand your business. So if you haven't done that, it would be a really powerful thing for you to do.
Any particular countries? Can you tell anything like that, or?
I can, not right now,
Okay.
but look, yeah, I would have to look at a
Yeah.
relocation.
Okay.
But if you say, like, okay, here's an example. You might go down your nutrition route, or you're, working with the hormones and natural medicine as you do.
Mm-hmm.
And you might think, I've really got an interest now in Ayurveda.
Mm-hmm.
That's just calling to me. You might then travel overseas to learn about
Yeah.
Ayurveda.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
in India.
Okay.
One thing that is really interesting in your chart is the capacity you have to earn abundance through occult means. It's actually in your chart twice. So I don't know how much you know about astrology, but there's a big thing about creating psychological breakthroughs for people in order to actually create a lot of wealth and abundance. So this is me, like, just picking out things as I'm going through.
Yeah.
But if you sort of have any inkling to going into something a bit woo-woo, you absolutely should, because there's a huge gift for it here, which will only deepen what you do. One thing I will say is your Saturn return is happening in the fifth house of inner child, creativity, in Neptune, in Pisces, sorry. And it does, when I see this, I often notice there is something about when you're a child being a lot more mature than you needed to be, or there's something about not really feeling like you were a child when you were. And there was maybe a lack of being able to be creative or use your imagination as a child, or there's some sort of inherent blockage in creativity through fear of maybe what your peers have thought, or there's some wounding in maybe how friends had treated you growing up in school, and that made you not very creative in that way. Anyway.
Yeah, I was a very sensible child. I've never
Yes.
had much of an imagination. I don't know if that's because I've been blocked at some point, but I literally can't imagine or visualize anything.
Yeah, well, that will change when you are about, that's your Saturn return.
Okay.
It's to actually embrace and open your mind to everything you cannot see, the things that are completely nonsensical and make no sense. It will connect you deeply to a sense of something bigger than yourself. The fifth house is also it's also ancient studies, and so studying ancient texts. So just bear that in mind. It can be that with the fifth house Saturn, there's a delay in having children, or that through having children, you are going to actually experience your childhood again and get to relive and heal in that way. Especially as a child, you may not have been even able, like there may have been some sort of lack of being able to communicate yourself in like because there's a heavy karma around the third house, which is communication, and Pluto's in the second house, which is like speech. And through having your own children, that will be an amazing time for you to actually start to heal your own inner child, because you can actually get down on the floor and be stupid with them and actually let go of that limitation.
Mm-hmm.
Because often with Saturn in the fifth, because it is our children, but it's also our inner child, and not being able to have been a creative and playful child. And so for you, there's something about, maybe you can literally like do some creative thing to prepare for your Saturn return. It will actually benefit your networks of people, and you'll get a lot of friends through that actually match your kind of who you want to be and what you want to leave in the world to actually help you. You could discover some hidden talent to do with art and music and creativity, like I'm not even joking, that could unleash a blockage that stopped you reaching your goals and dreams and serving community, like, I don't know, sound healing or painting or color therapy, dancing, because you've got a lot of Aries in there. You could literally like find a new hobby or something. So if you've had an inkling of a feeling you want to try something new and creative that feels completely random, definitely do it, because you'll be remedying your Saturn.
Would you do that now, or like in 3 years' time when I'm 28, just really up those things that year?
I think you would benefit now if you have time. But if you don't feel like it, then obviously don't do it. But you could perhaps use an astrological remedy, like bring someone else's chart. There's a method I use, it's an occult method. You have to be careful how you use it, but say you could put Jupiter there by your Saturn, to just sort of inflate it a bit and find out what those blockages are that stop you from being creative, because there's a lot of gifts that can come from it. It might just be that Saturn there's like, I don't see the point in being creative. Like, it's a waste of time.
Yeah, I
And
can't
that's,
think of anything off the top of my head that may be blocking that. I'll have a think.
I mean, with Saturn, it's just like you've not seen the point. You don't see the point in it.
Okay.
It's a bit like with me. So Saturn just puts limitation wherever it goes, and it's like a heaviness there. I would say, like, just try something creative. Just in the next, the sooner the better, because essentially, like, then Saturn return will bring rewards. So you might find, wow, like, it could be that you studying ancient texts becomes massive in your business. So ancient Ayurvedic texts or ancestral, I don't know, healing modalities, because there's a Pisces theme there, but it's around ancient texts. So, healing and earth medicine can be, definitely to do with spiritual medicine. So, I mean, anything that's a bit out there, you might want to give it a go. I don't know what's there in Manchester.
No, not much where I am, but yeah, I'm a bit of a research geek, so that makes sense. And I have been thinking about dancing more recently. So yeah,
Good.
I'm definitely not a singer or a musician or an artist. So I think dance may be a good thing for me to try. I'm definitely going to do it. Yeah.
Yeah, because Aries is physical and you have physical energy. So dance, yes. Also, you say you're not a good singer, but North Node, second house, next to Jupiter and Pluto, you have the power to change and influence people with your voice and speech. Yeah, hugely.
Okay.
When you definitely, I mean, you can see you have a podcast, for example. This is a way it manifests, but will actually be part of your legacy. Yeah, there's so much here in your chart. Obviously in everyone's chart there is, but definitely explore those things, and anything occult and mystic. I cannot emphasize that. Earth medicine, herbal medicine. Yeah, give it a go.
Yeah, that's so interesting. I really love learning more about myself. Like I said, I kind of have been thinking about some of those things. Like, I'm really interested in herbal medicine and old naturopathic remedies. Public speaking used to be like my worst fear, my worst nightmare, and now I actually enjoy it. So I've done workshops and seminars and things, and I really do enjoy it. And I love doing the podcast as well. So makes sense. And I know that lots of people are going to want to do some of this for themselves. They're like, stop talking about you. I want to know about me. But this is what you do with clients, isn't it? You go through the astrological charts. And what else can you do, maybe virtually, to help maybe some of the listeners?
Okay. How do you mean virtual?
Like, what services do you offer? Like, if someone wasn't to live in Birmingham where you are, how can you help? So, like, you've mentioned Reiki, distance Reiki. What else could you offer?
Sorry.
That's fine. It's a bit of a complex. I didn't get to the point there.
I never get to the point. So I do a lot of my astrological readings, just down to demand, are pre-recorded. So what happens is you book a reading, and there is a premium, and we can meet over Skype for readings, but like then I send it to you by a certain date, and then you just listen to it via a link. You can ask me questions, obviously, but people have said, so super accurate, so helpful. The feedback I'm getting is incredible, so that's really great. But I can also, like, I do oracle card readings, like tarot readings, and they're a bit rarer, but I do a lot of them. And energy healing Reiki is where we would connect and agree a time, and then I do the treatment, then I send you a 30-minute voice recording of things I've found based on that, and remedies and things like that. I am actually in the new year going to set up an astrological kind of school. It's going to be like subscription, so instead of people having to pay a big chunk of money up front, it will be like they pay like each month, and then have like the classes, and we'll load it up. So they might need to jump out one month
Mm-hmm.
because of cost.
Yeah.
And then they might want to jump back in. And so it'll be like by the end
Mm-hmm.
of like, they'll be able to understand like how to, it's to get people to read a chart.
Right. It's a really good idea. Great.
Yeah. So those are kind of my virtual things, but I do have the blog and the podcast, which are free.
Yeah.
And, you know, my YouTube, which is just a regurgitation, to be honest.
Yeah, I love your videos on the monthly readings. No, they're the best.
They're so
I really recommend. I know it's so hard for you to sum it all up in one little video, but it really is insightful.
They're great. Like, I mean, some of them are funny. I'm going to do the December ones. And like I say, it's Christmas. So, you know, if people do want to have readings and things, if they get in now, they'll be in before Christmas.
Perfect.
But people can access me those ways, or just, you know, get in touch, you know.
Yeah, where can people find you online?
So you can find me at cassieaurora.com, or my Instagram at Cassie Aurora Coaching.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
I'll link those in the show notes as well. And your name's beautiful, by the way. Is that your real Aurora? Is your real name?
So my first name is real.
Yeah.
My second name is not.
I thought so. I was like, you can't have a beautiful name like that and be real.
I had an incident with like a kind of a stalker. Yes, horrendous. It's because I've got Pluto opposition Mars, so it's like I attract the crazy beast. I know, but I decided, right, I'm going to change it, and I'm going to pick something so extravagant and awesome. And I used to be last in the school register because my name's a W, and I was like, I'm going to go with something beginning with an A. I'm reinventing myself, and I love it. And it's not,
I love it.
Not my name, but
I
just thought, why not? Do you know what I mean? Be pretentious.
I agree. And before we finish up, just a few quick questions. I know I asked you at the start, I don't think I'd hit record yet, about the reason that I see 11:11 literally every single day on the clock, and I go through phases of doing this, and this particular time it's been going on for probably close to a year. Every day when I check my phone, it's 11:11, and then there'll be different points throughout the day where I'll see 111 on the TV or in a magazine or something. What does that indicate?
So there's a lot you can read. I honestly have come down to, it's a confirmation it's a light code or a confirmation from the universe. You're on the path, keep going. Sometimes it's just a reminder, I think, to me, that like we're in alignment. Some people say it's angels communicating. Yeah, definitely. It's also law of attraction, so you're on the vibration of manifestation. But you can see other numbers. You know, I get 2222. You can literally Google it. I know that sounds ridiculous, but intuitively, when I see it, it's a message from the universe, like, keep going.
Yeah.
That's what I see it as, because I see it all the time as well.
It actually annoys me, but then I love it. And when I don't see it, I'm like, where's it gone? And then it'll come straight back.
Exactly. And I think, honestly, if people are seeing it, it's a message from the universe that you're starting to move in the right direction. If you're in a time of crisis and you're seeing it, then it's saying, you know, it's an affirmation. The same as if you see feathers on the floor, you know, they're from spirit. And I do think if you ask for signs from spirit, so many come. I had some like the other week, I was driving, and suddenly in my head a voice shouted parakeets, and I was like, what even are parakeets? I was like, I think they're birds, I don't know. And it was just such a random thought, and I was like, whatever. I forgot about it. Then I went walking, bearing in mind it was like -3 or something this day, and I'm walking in the park about 4 o'clock or something afterwards, and I look up, and there's trees full of these bright green birds. And
in Birmingham?
Like, yes.
What?
Tropical birds. So I was like, what? And I asked Source, show me another sign, at which I looked down and I saw this massive white feather, and I was like, okay. So then I was like, these must be parakeets. So then I googled what a parakeet looks like. These were parakeets. I'm thinking, what the hell? These tropical birds that are normally in Hyde Park, apparently, don't know, but I've never seen them. I walk every day in the same park. They were singing to one another. It was just gorgeous, and it was like I was in the rainforest. It was crazy. And then I googled what they meant, and they're about love and monogamy and mating for life. And it was like the day after I'd met this new guy, and we'd been on this
Right.
date, and I was just like,
Oh my
what
God, that's crazy.
the hell? And in 11
Mm.
22 I see it all the time. Crazy stuff. So if we ask for signs, they might not even come in the ways of numbers. They can come in the ways of really subtle things. I mean, parakeets not that subtle.
No.
But there are other subtle things like songs. Songs are big on the radio. Songs come on, yeah, 100%. So
In what way? Like a song that reminds you of something, or a song that means
yeah,
something? Yeah.
yeah, or something you just need to hear.
Okay.
You know, I think so anyway. But
Mm.
that's why I ask for it.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think it's something creepy going on because it is law of attraction. But like, I don't know if you notice this, but I can think about a person from the past, and I've had no contact with them. I go onto my Facebook, and they're the first
Yeah.
thing I see in the
Yeah.
newsfeed. I'm like, I
Mhm.
just thought about you.
Mhm.
What
Or you
the
get
hell?
like an email from someone, or the phone rings, and you just know who it's going to be. Yeah, so
Yeah,
many little things. Do you think everyone has this ability, or are the people who are more intuitive or in touch with that?
I think everyone has the ability. I do. And, there's a thing about spiritual healers that I don't like, that seem to think I've got this gift. Yes, it's a gift. We all have the gift. We are all source. For some people, yes, they're born with it. It's a nuance. Someone might be a clairsentient in that they feel. Someone might be a clairvoyant in that they see. But everyone has their own unique gift because that's the nature of who we are. But yeah, like, I think everyone has the capacity to work in this way.
Mhm. Are there any
Definitely.
ways that we can strengthen our intuition?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the biggest one, go on a self-awareness path and integrate and come into complete authenticity.
Mm.
It sounds a bit boring. You might want to hear me say like mantra
Yeah.
meditation, yes.
Yeah.
But when you come into authenticity and you come into self-love and self-nurture, you realize there is no greater act of self-love and love for your community and family and friends than that of the path to self-discovery, because with that comes joy and abundance and self respect. Then comes the health, then comes the right food, all the right raw materials for us to come into our full potential. And in your full potential, you're in your unique God given gift. And it isn't something masculine linear that probably makes sense in society, because society is basically set up on escaping from who we are. But when you step into that, like 100%, then you're doing your soul purpose. And so then you'll be plugged into your unique soul stream or source. But yes, meditation, Reiki, they're all
Mm.
avenues. It's basically, I just think, get rid of all the layers of you that aren't you, all the incongruences. Admit with humility, I don't know. I'm on the path. I have reverence for the fact that I'll never know everything, but I'm committed to knowing the truth, the best truth I can in this life. And then I think the gifts come, the abundance comes, because you're in an intimate connection with yourself, and ultimately you are the universe experiencing itself through a physical,
Yeah.
reality. And so once you're in that intimate connection with yourself, life just changes. It's incredible.
Mhm. And are there any other books or resources or websites on astrology or energy medicine or anything like that comes to mind that you think people would be interested in, maybe if they're beginners or new to this subject?
Definitely one book that changed my life was Witch by Lisa Lister. Another one, it's on Audible. Another one is called Spirit Hacking by Shaman Durek. It's incredible.
Mm-hmm.
There is one, I mean, Paul Chek, anything he talks about, I really love. Yeah. But honestly, I sometimes think the less we read, the better.
Okay.
The best thing that ever happened to me was the Reach approach. And it's born actually in the Midlands, but it's a psychotherapy service, but it's holistic integrative therapy. And they genuinely saved my life. Genuinely, I mean that. And put me on a deep path to healing and have given me all the tools. I could not have realised my potential without them, I don't think. Honestly, I have a really intimate connection with my therapist. And they have a website, The Reach Approach, with loads of resources, some lovely, lovely meditations. That they really did save my life, though I will honestly say that.
Right.
So
I've not heard of that before. I'm going to have a look on the website, definitely.
Yeah,
and I'll include the links of all of those resources in the episode show notes, and obviously where people can find you, because I'm sure that they want to get their charts read as well and find out all of this amazing information that you shared with me today as well. So thank you so much, Cassie, for your time. I know that some people, this won't be their thing. They would have seen the episode title and clicked away. Unfortunately, maybe someone who was a little bit skeptical has stuck with us and listened to the whole thing, and maybe we've convinced them a little bit more. Maybe they're into the sciencey type of like microbiome and progesterone and all of this, but I think this is equally, if not more important than that. And I'm very nutritional therapy and like physical health based, but maybe I'll tap more into the spiritual and the more witchy things like you've told me to. So I'll definitely have to update you on how the dance class goes and all of this creativity that I'm going to be doing more of. So yeah, thanks Cassie so much for joining us today.